The Vraxian Empire had dominated the galaxy for centuries, their obsidian fleets slicing through star systems like predators through prey. No species had withstood their relentless advance. Their technology was a symphony of destruction, their arrogance forged in the crucible of unchallenged victories. When their scanners detected a faint signal from a backwater planet in the Orion Arm, Earth, they dismissed it as insignificant. Another primitive race to crush, another footnote in their conquests. General Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, Dreadfang, a towering figure clad in crimson robes that shimmered like spilled blood. His mandibles clicked irritably as he studied the holographic map before him. Humanity's fleet blinked feebly on the display, a ragtag assortment of outdated frigates and patched-together cruisers strewn across a handful of systems. "Pathetic," he rasped, his voice a guttural rumble that vibrated through the chamber. "They squabble over crumbs while we feast on empires. This will be no war, it will be an extermination." Lieutenant Zeth, a lean officer with eyes like polished obsidian, adjusted the map with a flick of his claw. "Their colonies are pitiful, General. New Haven," he pointed to a glowing dot on the map's edge, "is a speck. 1,000 humans on a barren rock, no defenses worth mentioning. It's irrelevant." Korath's gaze fixed on the dot, his lip curling. New Haven's audacity to exist in a galaxy claimed by the Vraxians offended him. "Erase it," he ordered, his tone as casual as if he were swatting an insect. "Let their ruin be a message." The command surged through the fleet. Within hours, Dreadfang and its escorts descended on New Haven, a storm of steel and plasma. The sky ignited as lances of energy pierced the atmosphere, shredding the colony's fragile shields. Domes buckled and exploded, venting air into the void. A grain silo erupted, hurling molten debris across the scarred terrain. The attack was precise, merciless, a clinical purge. On the surface, a young engineer named Mira stumbled through the chaos, her breath ragged as she clutched a cracked data pad. "Evacuate! Get to the shuttles!" she yelled into her comm, but only static answered. A shadow loomed overhead, a Vraxian fighter banking for another strike. She froze, eyes wide, as a barrage engulfed her in blinding light. Aboard Dreadfang, Korath watched the carnage unfold on a view screen, sipping a cup of bitter nectar. "Efficient," he murmured, his expression unmoved. His crew operated with mechanical precision, their faces blank. This was routine, a minor cleansing in an endless campaign. But as New Haven's last lights flickered out, a faint signal pierced the bridge's silence. A human transmission, looping through the static. "We will remember New Haven, and we will answer." The words were cold, unyielding. Zeth tilted his head. "A distress signal?" Korath waved a dismissive claw. "The death rattle of a broken species." He turned away, blind to the spark he just struck. That message wasn't a cry for help, it was a promise. On Earth, the United Earth Council chamber was a mausoleum of shock. A holographic feed from New Haven replayed endlessly. A child's toy floating in zero-G, a habitat collapsing, a singed flag flapping amid the wreckage. Counselor Elena Ramirez stared, her hands trembling. "They didn't even warn them," she whispered, rage seeping into her voice. General Marcus Hale, a weathered soldier with scars etched across his face, glared at the screen. "This isn't war," he snarled, slamming a fist on the table. "It's slaughter." The room fell silent. Humanity had spent decades divided, nations hoarding wealth, fleets clashing over scraps. But now, as New Haven's ashes settled, something shifted. It wasn't despair, it was fury. Beyond the council, the footage spread like wildfire. In New Shanghai's sprawling slums, a mechanic tightened his grip on a wrench, muttering curses. At an Arctic military base, pilots raced to their cockpits, engines roaring to life. On a remote asteroid mine, a grizzled foreman shut off his drill and growled, "They've crossed a line." No grand speeches united them, no orders rallied them. Yet the pieces of a fractured species began to align, bound by a shared wound. In a shadowed facility buried beneath Mars's red crust, a lone figure watched the transmission. His fingers flew across a console, activating systems dormant for decades. "Project Lazarus," he said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Time to wake up." Back on Dreadfang, Korath lounged in his command chair, basking in the glow of triumph. Signal the Emperor, he said, smug. The pestilence is purged. His crew complied, but the human transmission lingered, a persistent hum in the background. Zeth shifted uncomfortably. Should we block it, General? Korath laughed, a harsh grating sound. Let them wail, it's meaningless. But in the vastness beyond his warship, humanity stirred. The Vraxians had struck first, expecting a swift kill. They didn't realize they'd just ignited a wildfire, one that would burn hotter with every world they touched. Across ships and colonies, a new whisper spread. Remember New Haven. Make them pay. The Vraxian Empire reveled in its latest conquest, oblivious to the tempest gathering beyond its dominion. Aboard the flagship Dreadfang, General Korath sprawled across his command throne, the ship's deep hum echoing his authority. His mandibles twitched with satisfaction as he reviewed the aftermath of New Haven's destruction. A human outer colony reduced to ash and echoes. The victory was a fleeting thrill, a prelude to the next extermination he planned with relish. Nearby, Lieutenant Zeth hovered, his compound eyes glinting with incoming data. Scans revealed human fleets coalescing near their homeworld, primitive vessels in growing numbers. Korath's guttural laugh rolled through the bridge like a landslide. He waved off the report with a dismissive claw, his arrogance blinding him to the ember he had unwittingly fanned into flame. On Earth, the United Earth Council chamber thrummed with a quiet, resolute energy. New Haven's fall had shattered complacency, forging grief into a weapon of determination. Counselor Elena Ramirez stood before a holographic map, its shimmering expanse detailing human territories now under threat. Her presence commanded attention, her call for unity slicing through the air like tempered steel. General Marcus Hale, his weathered face etched with scars, stood beside her, his silent agreement heavy with the weight of battles past. They needed more than solidarity, they needed something extraordinary. From the chamber's fringes, Dr. Kira Voss stepped forward, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes sharp with unspoken knowledge. Known for her elusive Project Lazarus, she carried an air of mystery. With a deft motion, she summoned a new hologram. Sleek, predatory warships shrouded in stealth technology, Revenant-class dreadnoughts, birthed in secrecy within the Oort cloud. Ramirez's skepticism flickered, but Voss's poised confidence quelled doubts. The Council acted decisively, issuing a summons to every corner of human space, every fleet, every rogue, every beating heart. This war belonged to all of humanity. The call surged through the void, a unifying pulse that bound humanity's fragmented domains. In the asteroid belt, miners transformed their tools into instruments of war, welding drills into cannons with deliberate precision. On Mars, engineers worked tirelessly, retrofitting freighters with bristling arsenals, their faces streaked with sweat and resolve. Smugglers lurking in the Jovian moons intercepted the encrypted signal, stand or fall, and pledged their allegiance. Even the enigmatic Lunar Consortium, long detached, dispatched its stealth frigates, breaking decades of isolation. On Titan, in a dimly lit bar, Captain Jax nursed a drink, his cybernetic arm humming faintly. A cloaked stranger approached, their murmured words striking a chord deep within him. The bar's cracked screen looped footage of New Haven's ruin, and Jax's grip tightened, his resolve hardening. He didn't need convincing, only a direction to unleash his fury. Across human space, countless scenes mirrored this one, disparate threads weaving into a tapestry of defiance, fueled by a collective wound and a hunger for vengeance. Aboard Dreadfang, Korath scrutinized the latest scans. Human ships multiplied like insects, their movements erratic yet purposeful. He sneered at their boldness, ordering his fleet to ready for another crushing blow. Zeth lingered, unease flickering in his stance as he noted faint anomalies, unexplained signatures from the outer rim. Korath brushed it aside, his certainty an impenetrable wall against suspicion. But the human transmissions had evolved. The chaos and desperation had faded, replaced by a chilling, methodical undertone, an air of anticipation that gnawed at the edges of Raxian confidence. Back on Earth, the council chamber buzzed with urgency. Voss's dreadnoughts drew closer, their stealth systems masking their approach, yet Ramirez demanded more, a way to wound the Vraxians deeply. Hale's grim smirk hinted at covert allies unearthing sensitive intel. Minutes later, an officer stumbled in, breathless, clutching a decrypted Vraxian transmission. Coordinates for a critical supply line. Ramirez's gaze turned feral, recognizing the opportunity to strangle the enemy's lifeline. In the depths of space, a makeshift human squadron rallied under Jax's command. His freighter, once a hauler, now bristled with hidden weaponry, manned by a crew of hardened ex-soldiers and outcasts. They drifted toward the Vraxian depot, cloaked in silence, their sensors pinging softly against the void. The enemy patrols moved lethargically, lulled by routine. With a subtle gesture, Jax unleashed the ambush. The humans shed their disguise, loosing a torrent of missiles and railgun salvos. The depot ignited in a brilliant chain of detonations, its contents spiraling into the blackness. Before the Vraxians could retaliate, Jax's team melted back into the shadows, leaving behind a wreckage of shattered pride. Korath's bellow reverberated through Dreadfang's bridge, his rage a tangible force. The human raid had been surgical, a deliberate taunt that pierced his veneer of control. Szeth flinched, his mandibles quivering as he relayed the damage. The humans fought with a ferocity and cunning unfamiliar to the Vraxian war machine. Fury consumed Korath as he smashed his console, ordering an immediate counterstrike to obliterate the next human world in reach. Amid his tirade, a human broadcast hijacked the bridge's comms, a stark, icy message. New Haven remembers, you're next. The words lingered, sowing a seed of uncertainty in Korath's ironclad mind. On Earth, Ramirez monitored the raid's triumph, her expression fierce with satisfaction. The Vraxians were rattled, their aura of invulnerability fractured. Hale tempered the mood with a stern reminder of the reprisal to come. Voss interjected, her tone cold and resolute. Project Lazarus was more than ships, it was humanity's rebirth in fire. The escalation had begun, and the Vraxians would soon fathom the price of their hubris. Humanity's resolve solidified, an unyielding force born from shared loss. The Vraxians had anticipated a swift conquest, but they had roused a species that thrived on retribution. What began as a war for survival had transformed into something deeply personal. The human raid on the Vraxian supply depot had left scars on both sides. Smoke still curled from the wreckage, a silent testament to humanity's defiance. For the humans, it was a spark of hope, proof they could wound their towering oppressors. For the Vraxians, it was a jolt, a crack in their belief that humans were mere pests to be swatted away. On Earth, the United Earth Council seized the momentum. Counselor Elena Ramirez and General Marcus Hale stood at the helm of a bustling command center, their faces etched with resolve. Engineers swarmed over the Revenant-class dreadnoughts, sleek, deadly ships forged in the shadows of Project Lazarus. These vessels were humanity's answer to the Vraxian armada, fast, cloaked in stealth tech, and bristling with weapons designed to pierce alien hulls. Dr. Kira Voss, the architect of Project Lazarus, moved among the chaos like a storm's eye. Her silver hair glinted under the harsh lights, and her sharp gaze missed nothing. Years of dissecting captured Vraxian tech had honed her into a weapon of intellect. She adjusted a holo display, her fingers dancing over controls as she briefed the council on weak points in the enemy's defenses. Across the stars, the Vraxians stirred. Aboard the Dreadfang, General Korath loomed over a holographic map, his mandibles twitching with barely contained fury. The human strike had bruised his pride, and his lieutenants felt the heat of his displeasure. Szeth, his cautious second-in-command, traced a claw along the map, his compound eyes flickering as he calculated losses. The humans were a scattered force, their ships ragtag compared to the Vraxian fleet, yet they had drawn blood. Korath slammed a claw into the console, the hologram shuddering. "We underestimated them," he snarled, his voice a low rumble that filled the chamber. "No longer. We will grind them to dust." Szeth shifted, his tone measured. "They fight with desperation, General. It makes them unpredictable." Korath's glare pinned Szeth in place. "Then we will break their chaos with order." The War Council churned with tension, claws tapping and eyes darting as they plotted. The humans were rallying, and the Vraxians knew time was slipping away. Meanwhile, humanity prepared its next strike. Captain Jax, the weathered leader of the depot raid, guided his upgraded freighter through an asteroid belt. His cybernetic arm hummed as he adjusted the controls. His crew, a mix of hardened veterans and outcasts, working in tight-lipped unison. Victory had sharpened their hunger. Their target, a Vraxian outpost perched on the fringe of human space. It was a nerve center, relaying orders and anchoring patrols. Destroying it would cripple the enemy's grip on the region. Jax's sensors pinged with faint Vraxian signatures as they closed in, his pulse quickening. The assault erupted with brutal swiftness. Revenant dreadnoughts uncloaked in a blaze of light, their missile salvos shredding the outpost's shields. Vraxian ships scrambled into the void, their angular forms glinting like predators roused from sleep, but the humans struck first and struck hard. Jax's freighter darted through the fray, cannons roaring, explosions lit the darkness as debris spiraled outward. Amid the chaos, a young engineer named Mira shone. She'd survived the fall of New Haven, her home reduced to ash by Vraxian fire. Now her nimble fingers cracked into the outpost systems, disabling its comms with a flurry of code. The Vraxians faltered, their coordination crumbling. The tide turned. Human ships wove through the carnage, striking with precision born of necessity. Vraxian hulls split and burned, their last gasps swallowed by the void. When the final enemy ship erupted in a fiery bloom, Jax exhaled, a rare, grim smile tugging at his lips. Victory came at a price. Damaged hulls smoked among the human fleet, and Mira knelt beside a wounded ship, tools flashing as she patched its wounds. Her face, smudged with grime, held a quiet fire, a reflection of humanity's unyielding spirit. Aboard the Dreadfang, Korath received the report with a roar that rattled the deck. The humans were no longer a nuisance. They were a threat. He turned to Zeth, his voice a jagged edge. "Ready the fleet. We end this now." Zeth inclined his head, unease rippling through him. The humans wouldn't yield, and he sensed a storm brewing beyond their grasp. The galaxy tensed. Humanity, forged in loss and fury, stood poised to escalate the fight. The Vraxians, their arrogance shaken, braced for a reckoning. The war was personal now, and neither side would rest until the other broke. The war had reached a fever pitch. Humanity's unexpected resilience had thrown the Vraxians into disarray, their once unshakable confidence faltering with each human victory. Yet both sides understood the conflict was far from resolved. Whispers of a new Vraxian superweapon had begun to circulate through humanity's intelligence networks, a device rumored to emit a pulse capable of annihilating entire fleets in an instant. The United Earth Council, unwilling to let such a threat materialize, acted swiftly. They assembled a covert team, each member chosen for their expertise and unyielding resolve to infiltrate the Vraxian research facility on the desolate moon of Zethera. Captain Elena Ramirez led the operation. Her eyes, once alight with optimism, now smoldered with a relentless fury. New Haven, the colony where she'd built a life, had been reduced to cinders by Vraxian bombardments. The memory of that day, flames clawing at the sky, the distant screams of her family fading into silence, fueled her every step. This mission wasn't just strategic, it was personal. Her team was small but formidable. Jax, a grizzled hacker, carried a quiet intensity, his cybernetic implants humming faintly as he adjusted his gear. Mira, the demolitions expert, moved with the Predator's grace, her hands steady as she checked her explosives. Dr. Voss, the medic, exuded calm under pressure, her medical kit slung across her back like a lifeline. Together they boarded the Wraith, a stealth ship cloaked in shadow tech, its sleek form designed to slip through enemy lines unseen. The journey to Zethera was a study in tension. The team communicated through sharp nods and subtle hand signals, their silence a testament to their unity. Words felt superfluous when their purpose, stopping the Vraxians, bound them tighter than any oath. Elena's mind churned with strategies, contingencies, and a singular searing vow: make them pay. As the Wraith evaded Vraxian patrols, Zethera's barren surface emerged on the horizon. Jagged spires of rock pierced the moon's crust, dust storms swirling in chaotic patterns that obscured their target. The ship descended into a shadowed ravine, its cloaking field shimmering faintly as it powered down. Elena stepped onto the alien soil first, her boots sinking into the ashen ground. The air was thin, the gravity unnaturally light, yet the weight of their mission anchored her. The facility loomed ahead, a fortress carved into the moon's bedrock. Its black walls gleamed under the dim light of a distant star, a stark contrast to the desolate wasteland surrounding it. Jax's scanners detected faint energy pulses, guards patrolling the perimeter, their movements methodical. With precision honed by countless missions, the team advanced. Mira's tools danced over security grids, disabling alarms with surgical accuracy, while Elena's senses sharpened, attuned to every shadow and sound. They breached the facility's outer defenses, slipping into a corridor thick with the hum of machinery. Vraxian technicians scurried through the halls, their insect-like forms clicking softly against the metal floors. Elena raised a hand, signaling Jax toward the mainframe. His fingers flew across his data pad, interfacing with the system as lines of alien code scrolled across his visor. Mira, meanwhile, planted charges at critical junctures, silent promises of destruction, her movements swift and deliberate. Dr. Voss stood watch, her posture rigid, ready to act. Jax's breath caught suddenly, his eyes widening behind his visor. Amid the weapon schematics, he uncovered encrypted files tagged Operation Eclipse. The data was fragmented, but fragments stood out. Dissident factions, betrayal, humanity's end. Elena's pulse quickened. This was no mere weapon. It hinted at something larger, a conspiracy buried within the Vraxian Empire. Before Jax could extract more, a shrill alarm pierced the air, bathing the corridor in pulsating red light. Vraxian guards stormed the hallway, their chitinous armor glinting menacingly. Elena's pulse rifle roared to life, each shot a precise burst of defiance. Mira lobbed a grenade, the detonation rocking the facility and sending shards of metal spiraling through the air. Dr. Voss darted forward, her hands steady as she bandaged a gash on Jax's arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. Amid the chaos, Elena locked eyes with a Vraxian officer. Its mandibles snapped with rage, its claws gleaming as it lunged. She met its charge head-on, her combat knife clashing against its exoskeleton in a shower of sparks. Memories of New Haven surged within her, the laughter of her family now just echoes in the void. With a guttural roar, she plunged the blade into its chest, the creature's dying screech reverberating through the hall as it collapsed. The victory was fleeting. Dr. Voss, tending to Jax, caught a plasma bolt in her side. She staggered, clutching the wound, crimson blooming across her uniform. Her eyes met Elena's, resolute despite the pain. She waved them onward, her voice a faint rasp lost in the cacophony. "Go, I'll cover you." Elena froze, torn between loyalty and duty. Mira's firm grip on her arm snapped her back to reality. With a heavy nod, she pressed forward, the team racing through collapsing corridors as Mira's charges began to detonate. They burst from the facility, debris raining around them, and sprinted for the Wraith. The ship's engines flared as Vraxian fighters scrambled into the sky, their lasers slicing through the dust-choked air. Elena piloted with ferocious focus, weaving through the barrage until the moon faded into the blackness of space. Back on Earth, the team gathered in silence, the loss of Dr. Voss a wound deeper than any plasma burn. Her sacrifice had bought their escape, but it was a bitter price. Jax's stolen data offered a glimmer of hope, a hint of dissent within the Vraxian ranks, a crack that humanity might widen. Yet the ominous phrase, humanity's end, lingered, a shadow over their fleeting triumph. Whatever Operation Eclipse entailed, it foretold a danger beyond the superweapon they'd destroyed. Elena stood alone, gazing at the stars through the Wraith's viewport. Her resolve hardened into something unyielding, forged in grief and fury. The war was personal, for her, for humanity, and she would see it through, no matter the cost. The Vraxians had underestimated them once. They would not make that mistake again. The war against the Vraxian Empire had reached a pivotal moment. Humanity, once fragmented and reeling from defeat, had united with a fierce resolve to make the aliens pay for their relentless aggression. The obliteration of New Haven had ignited the spark, but it was the unyielding spirit of the survivors that fanned the flames of resistance. Recent intelligence had revealed a critical target, a central hub on a Vraxian space station in the Orion Arm, orchestrating the Empire's military commands. Destroying it could plunge their forces into disarray, offering humanity a fleeting chance to turn the tide. The United Earth Council acted decisively, assembling a small team of specialists for a covert operation. This mission was more than a tactical strike. It was a defiant roar, a testament to humanity's refusal to bow. Captain Elena Ramirez led the team. A seasoned soldier, her strategic brilliance was renowned, yet it was the loss of her family on New Haven that fueled her silent fury. She carried their memory like a blade, sharpened for vengeance. With her was Jax, a hacker prodigy whose cybernetic implants let him breach alien systems with uncanny speed. Mira, a stealth operative, slipped through shadows, her cloaking tech rendering her a phantom. Boom, the demolitions expert, brought a veteran's grit and a talent for chaos, his hands steady with explosives. Dr. Voss, the medic, offered calm amid the storm, her skill a lifeline in battle. Each bore personal scars from the war, yet their shared purpose bound them, to hit the Vraxians where it hurt. Their vessel, the Shadow Blade, was a marvel of human ingenuity, equipped with a cloaking device that warped light around it, evading detection. Ramirez wielded a pulse rifle, Jax his hacking gear, Mira her stealth kit, Boom his arsenal of charges, and Dr. Voss her medical tools. Days of preparation honed their plan, studying the station's blueprints, plotting patrol paths, simulating every contingency. Failure wasn't an option. It would doom not just them, but countless human colonies. As they boarded, Ramirez's voice cut through the tension. "We'd go in quiet, strike hard, get out fast, one shot, that's all we've got." The team's nods were grim, their determination palpable. The Shadow Blade glided through the void, cloaked and silent. The Vraxian station emerged against the blackness, its jagged spires and pulsing energy veins a stark alien silhouette. Patrol ships drifted nearby, sensors probing the dark, but the human craft slipped past unseen. Mira docked at a maintenance port, its minimal security their entry point. The airlock hissed open, revealing a frigid metallic interior, the air heavy with an otherworldly tang. Jax knelt at a terminal, his datapad whirring as he disabled alarms and cameras, implants glowing faintly. Mira scouted ahead, her form shimmering into near invisibility. Boom planted charges at key structural points, each placement precise. Ramirez stood guard, rifle raised, every creak and hum sharpening her senses. Deeper in, the station's corridors twisted into a maze, alien glyphs etched into walls. Jax's tech deciphered enough to guide them to the control hub. Then Mira's hand shot up. A patrol approached. The team flattened against the cold metal, breaths held as Vraxian guards marched past, claws scraping, compound eyes glinting. When the threat receded, they pressed on. The control room loomed ahead, its consoles alive with alien script. Jax plugged in, uploading a virus to cripple their network. "It's spreading," he murmured. Boom set his final charge. "Ready," he rasped. Ramirez glanced at her watch. 3 minutes, move. But as they turned, alarms screamed. Red lights bathed the corridor, and heavy footsteps thundered closer. "They've found us," Mira snapped. "Fight out," Ramirez barked. Chaos erupted. Vraxian guards swarmed, energy bolts sizzling through the air. Ramirez ducked behind a bulkhead, her shots felling foes with lethal precision. Jax and Mira flanked, their fire surgical. Boom's grenade roared, blasting aliens apart, but reinforcements surged in. Dr. Voss patched a gash on Jax's arm, unflinching as battle raged. "We've got to reach the ship," Ramirez yelled. They fought forward, ammo waning, the air thick with smoke and scorched metal. A towering Vraxian warrior barred their path, armored and clawed. Ramirez lunged, weaving past its strike, jamming her rifle into its maw and firing until it crumpled. "Go," she shouted, herding them through the airlock. They scrambled into the Shadow Blade, engines flaring. As they peeled away, Boom triggered the charges. The station blazed, a fiery wound in the void, debris scattering. Pursuing fighters gave chase, lasers cutting close. Mira piloted with desperate skill, evading the onslaught until they leapt into hyperspace. Relief washed over them. They'd succeeded. The hub was ash, the virus wreaking havoc. Yet triumph soured fast. A transmission from Earth crackled through. The Vraxians, enraged, had unleashed a colossal assault on human colonies. Worlds burned, lives snuffed out in retribution. Ramirez stared at the screen, jaw tight. "We knew this might happen," she said softly. "But we had to strike, for New Haven, for us all." The team closed ranks around her, their resolve unbroken. They'd bloody the Empire's nose, but the war raged on, fiercer than ever. It was personal now, and they'd fight to the last. The aftermath of the Vraxian assault painted a grim picture across the human colony of Arcadia. Once a thriving beacon of humanity's reach into the stars, it now lay in ruins. Shattered buildings tilted at odd angles, their skeletal remains stark against the orange sky. Smoke thickened the air, mingling with the sharp scent of scorched metal. The distant wails of the wounded and the urgent calls of rescue teams cut through the stillness. Captain Elena Ramirez stepped off the shadow blade, her boots grinding against the debris littering the landing pad. Her eyes swept over the devastation, a heavy weight settling in her chest. This was the cost of their daring strike on the Vraxian hub, a brutal retaliation aimed at crushing human morale. Yet the Vraxians misjudged their foe. Where they expected surrender, they found defiance. Survivors clawed through rubble, searching for signs of life, while medics moved with quiet determination among the injured. Elena navigated the wreckage to reach the command center, a hastily assembled tent rising from the chaos. Inside, General Marcus Hale stood before a holographic map, his expression carved from stone. Counselor Ramirez, no kin to Elena, merely a shared name, stood at his side, her eyes fierce despite the redness rimming them. The map glowed with ominous red markers: New Shanghai, Mars Outpost, the Lunar Consortium, all scarred by the Vraxian onslaught. Hale's hands rested behind his back, his stance unyielding. Words were unnecessary. His resolve spoke through the tension in his shoulders. Elena approached, and he met her gaze with a curt nod. She saw the burden he carried, but also the spark of resistance that refused to dim. They would not break. Across human space, that same spirit surged. In New York's sprawling streets, recruitment centers swelled with volunteers, young and old stepping forward to join the fight. On Mars, factories roared, producing ships and weapons at a relentless pace, the workers driven by unspoken purpose. In the Lunar Consortium's labs, scientists toiled over innovations, unveiling a plasma cannon capable of piercing Vraxian armor. Even children pitched in, gathering scrap metal with small, determined hands. Humanity had fused into a single force, each soul bound to the cause. At Earth's central base, the war room hummed with tension. Jax, the team's hacker, hunched over a console, unraveling the data stolen from the Vraxian hub. Alien code streamed across the screen, gradually yielding to human understanding. Elena paced nearby, her restless energy barely contained. Every second of delay gnawed at her, but precision mattered more than haste now. Jack straightened at last, a quiet triumph lighting his face. He had cracked it. Hale and Counselor Ramirez leaned in, their eyes locked on the display. A schematic materialized, a blueprint of the Vraxian homeworld's defenses, complete with patrol paths, shield arrays, and a central command nexus tying their fleet together. Destroying that nexus could cripple the Vraxians, sowing chaos among their ranks. It was a rare chance, but a treacherous one. The homeworld bristled with fortifications, and any strike would demand nearly all of humanity's dwindling ships. Hale's gaze traced the map, his mind churning through options. The Shadowblade's cloaking tech could slip a small team past the defenses to sabotage the Nexus, while the fleet drew fire in a frontal assault. Risky, but possible. Doubt lingered in the room. Counselor Chen, ever prudent, frowned at the schematics, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the table. Elena's jaw tightened. She had no patience for hesitation. Hale countered the unease with a steady hand, gesturing to the map and then to a projection of losses. The figures were stark, but the cost of doing nothing loomed larger. Chen's shoulders eased, his reluctance yielding to necessity. The decision ignited the room. Officers sprang into action, plotting the fleet's course. The strategy took shape, a dual assault. The bulk of their ships would engage the Vraxians head-on, a distraction to mask Elena's stealth team as they infiltrated the homeworld to strike the Nexus. Preparations consumed the base. Elena watched as troops and gear loaded onto shuttles, the air thick with the rumble of engines and the clatter of steel. Her thoughts drifted to New Haven, to her family, lost in the Vraxians' first attack, and to the countless others who'd paid the same price. This war had carved deep wounds, yet it had forged something unbreakable in its place, a reason to press on. As dusk painted the sky, Elena stood alone on the tarmac, shadows stretching long around her. She gripped her pulse rifle, its weight a steady anchor. Readiness coursed through her veins, mirrored in every face she'd seen that day. Tomorrow, they would strike the Vraxian homeworld. A desperate throw of the dice, but one they couldn't refuse. For New Haven, for humanity. The human fleet ripped out of hyperspace, a jagged scar of light against the dark expanse of the Vraxian system. General Marcus Hale stood rigid on the bridge of the Retribution, his flagship, staring at the viewscreen. The Vraxian homeworld filled the display, a menacing orb bristling with orbital platforms, fighter swarms, and hulking capital ships. Its defenses gleamed like the teeth of a trap ready to snap shut. Hale's jaw clenched, his weathered face betraying no doubt. This was humanity's gambit, their defiance made manifest. He gave the order with a single word: engage. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers relayed commands, and the fleet surged forward. Weapons ignited the void, plasma bolts and railgun salvos hammering Vraxian shields. The enemy answered with precision, their counterfire slicing through space. Hale watched as human vessels shattered, their wreckage blooming silently against the black. Yet the fleet held its course, a relentless tide meant to pull the Vraxians' gaze upward. Far below the orbital clash, the shadow blade carved a silent path through the mayhem. Captain Elena Ramirez sat in the command chair, her grip tight, her breath steady. The stealth ship's cloaking field warped reality around it, rendering it a ghost amid the storm. Jax, the tech specialist, tracked their route, his cybernetic implants humming as they interfaced with the ship's sensors. Mira guided the vessel with surgical skill, dodging debris and energy flares. Boom, the demolitions expert, ran a final check on his gear, his calm belying the stakes. Elena's mind flickered to New Haven, her family, her home, all ash now. The memory was a blade, sharp and unyielding, driving her forward. She buried it deep, her focus narrowing to the mission. The Shadow Blade carried humanity's hope: infiltrate the Vraxian command nexus and break their war machine from within. The ship breached the outer defenses, descending toward the planet's surface. The nexus sprawled in a fortified valley, its spires clawing at the alien sky, radiating power. Mira sat down in a shadowed ravine, and the team moved out, swift, silent, a blade in the dark. Elena took point, her pulse rifle a cold comfort in her hands. The alien landscape tested them. They slipped past patrols and drones, Jax disabling sensors with deft hacks, Mira's stealth tech shrouding their steps. Boom rigged charges at key junctions, his precision unshaken. The Nexus rose ahead, a fortress of alien design, its pulse a heartbeat of menace. Inside, the air thrummed with machinery. Glowing glyphs bathed the corridors in unearthly light. Jax jacked into a console, his fingers a blur as he cracked the Vraxian network. Mira and Boom positioned their final charges, shadows among the machines. Elena stood watch, every nerve taut, her thoughts a tangle of duty and loss. The moment stretched, fragile and heavy. Jax whispered, "I'm in. Virus uploading." The console chirped, accepting the sabotage. Then alarms screamed, red lights pulsed, and armored boots pounded closer. Mira's voice cut through. "They're onto us." Boom triggered the first charge, collapsing the entryway in a burst of dust and noise. Elena's orders were steel. "Finish it, we hold." They braced as Vraxian guards stormed in, their insect-like armor glinting. Elena fired, her rifle's roar a defiant cry, dropping the vanguard. Jax pushed the virus deeper, his implants flaring. Mira wove through the fray, blades flashing, while Boom's grenades tore gaps in the enemy lines. Elena fought with a fury born of grief, each kill a piece of her past avenged. The guards kept coming, an endless tide. "Done!" Jax yelled, ripping free of the console. "It's spreading." Boom hit the detonators, and the Nexus quaked, cracks spidering through its frame. "Go!" Elena barked. They ran, corridors buckling behind them, dust choking the air. The Shadow Blade waited, engines roaring. They scrambled aboard, Mira slamming the controls. The ship shot upward as the Nexus imploded, a wave of ruin rippling outward. The Vraxian command network faltered. Its collapse, a death knell. Above, Hale saw the signal. "Disengage, retreat," he commanded. The fleet peeled away, battered but unbroken, as Vraxian pursuit stumbled in disarray. The Shadow Blade rejoined them, a shadow slipping into the fold. Elena exhaled, a rare crack in her armor. They'd landed a blow, a wound the Vraxians wouldn't soon heal. The war raged on, but this victory was theirs. For her, it was a step toward balancing the scales of New Haven. The Vraxian Empire teetered on the brink of ruin, its once mighty dominion unraveling after the destruction of their command nexus. Yet, in its collapse, the Empire grew more dangerous, like a wounded beast thrashing in its final moments. General Korath, stripped of his aura of invincibility, clung to one last purpose: vengeance. He ordered a cataclysmic assault on Earth, a desperate bid to crush humanity's spirit before his empire faded into oblivion. The United Earth Council, battered but defiant, rallied for the defense. This was no mere battle. It was the war's defining hour, the crucible that would determine whether humanity stood or fell. On the bridge of the Retribution, General Marcus Hale gazed into the void as the Vraxian armada materialized from hyperspace. The enemy fleet loomed like a jagged scar across the cosmos, their hulls pocked from prior battles, but bristling with menace. Hale's hands gripped the command console, his weathered face illuminated by the flickering tactical display. Earth's orbit was a fortress of defiance. Orbital cannons primed, fighter wings deployed, and every surviving ship arrayed in a desperate shield. The call had gone out. No surrender, no retreat. Hale's voice cut through the tension on the bridge, calm but ironclad. "Hold the line." His crew responded with silent nods, their expressions carved from resolve. Earth was more than a planet. It was their origin, their legacy, and they would pour their blood into its defense. Far below, Captain Elena Ramirez stood in a hastily assembled command post on Earth's surface, her pulse rifle resting against a cracked table. Exhaustion gnawed at her, but her mind was a blade, honed by the memory of New Haven's fall. That loss, her family, her home, had become her fuel. She tracked the skies, ready to meet the Vraxians if they pierced the orbital line. The clash ignited with apocalyptic force. Vraxian ships unleashed torrents of plasma, their fiery lances slashing through space. Humanity retaliated with railgun salvos and missile storms, the vacuum erupting in a symphony of destruction. The Retribution trembled under the barrage, its shields straining as Hale directed fire toward the Vraxian flagship, the Dreadfang. Korath's demise could break their faltering will, and Hale intended to deliver it. Meanwhile, a covert human team infiltrated the Dreadfang. Jax, the wiry hacker, led the charge, his cybernetic implants buzzing as he hacked into alien networks. Mira, a phantom in the shadows, dispatched sentries with lethal grace, while Boom rigged explosives at key junctures, his hands steady despite the chaos. Their task was to cripple the beast from within, and they moved with surgical precision. On the Retribution, Hale tracked their progress, his jaw tight. The infiltrators' signal pulsed closer to the Dreadfang's heart. The battle outside was a slaughter. Human ships disintegrated under Vraxian fire, but the enemy paid in kind. Hope hung by a thread, taut and fraying. Then, the Dreadfang's guns fell silent. Jax's virus had burrowed deep, paralyzing its arsenal. The massive ship floated, exposed. Hale seized the opening. "All ships target the Dreadfang." The human fleet swarmed, their weapons tearing into the flagship. Its hull buckled, eruptions blooming along its spine as shields failed. Inside, Korath raged, his claws rending the command console. Smoke choked the bridge, alarms screaming as his empire crumbled. Defeat was a bitter tide, but he refused to drown quietly. With a guttural snarl, he ordered the Dreadfang to ram the Retribution. Engines flared, and the dying ship surged forward, a final act of spite. Hale saw the collision course and braced himself. Full evasive, the Retribution lurched, thrusters roaring, but the Dreadfang struck with devastating force. Metal groaned and split, the impact hurling Hale to the deck. Pain flared in his ribs, but he clawed his way back to the console. Elena's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and strained. Hail! Vraxian dropships are landing. They're hitting the surface. Blood streaked his face as he replied, "Stop them. We'll end it here." On Earth, Elena charged into the fray, leading a squad through New York's shattered streets. Vraxian troops, towering, clad in spiked armor, rampaged through the city, their weapons scouring the earth. Elena's rifle spat defiance, each shot a reckoning for her lost home. She fought with icy precision, her grief a silent storm. The war consumed the planet. In Paris, resistance cells battled through rubble. In Africa, survivors wielded scavenged weapons against the invaders. Humanity's stand was raw, primal, soldiers and civilians alike united in fury. The Vraxians pressed forward, relentless, but met a wall of human will. Aboard the Retribution, Hale assessed the carnage. The Dreadfang clung to life, its ramming leaving both ships crippled. With systems failing, Hale made his choice. He triggered the self-destruct, setting a countdown. All hands, evacuate. His crew fled to escape pods, but he remained, locking the sequence. Through the view screen, he watched the Dreadfang burn, a fitting grave for Korath. The Retribution exploded in a blinding nova, obliterating both vessels. On Earth, Elena glimpsed the flare through churning smoke, a pang of loss cutting through her. Hale was gone, but the fight wasn't. The Vraxian ground offensive wavered, their cohesion collapsing. Human forces surged, driving them back. In a ruined alley, Elena faced a lone Vraxian, its armor cracked, its breath ragged. She aimed her rifle, but as its gaze met hers, dimming defeated, she saw the end of their war. She lowered the barrel. It's finished. The alien slumped, its strength spent. Across the galaxy, Vraxian holdouts surrendered, their empire extinguished. Victory came at a staggering price. Elena stood amid the wreckage, the ghosts of New Haven heavy on her heart. Yet, as dawn pierced the haze, a spark of renewal flickered within her. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged scarred but triumphant. They had taken it personally, and they had won.